Okay, in the last video, we did all kinds of stuff. Well, the main thing we did was install that mega headlight. We did a lot of other stuff too, and it was mostly involved with the brakes. Side note, I know a lot of you guys were saying that I'm just gonna be blinding everybody on the road and what an a-hole I am. Y'all just jealous. I don't think it's too bad. If it is, they still have a full amber lens I can put over it, which will help. And I even have another idea for a contingency thing if I need to. We gotta get it out there and really see how it's gonna look. You know, fortunately, I'll get like my buddy to drive at me so I don't kill like a person I don't know. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna be messing with the flash tuner. One, because I wanna see if I can fix the speedo from the 15 tooth sprocket that we put on it. I've been told I can, although I don't see any option for it. We'll have to see what I can come up with. And then secondly, a wideband tuner kit for it. So we're gonna be installing that for even more power, because you know we need it. Garbage intro, go.
Let's take a perfectly good F07, tear it apart and turn it into an adventure bike. For no reason at all, I think Jake is losing his mind. Yeah, you crazy in the mug.
Whew. It is hot. I've got the door open. You probably hear some air conditioners running. I apologize, but it's like, I think with the heat index, it's like 111 right now. Trying to get everything sort of under the hood buttoned up, and we're getting really close to where we can start putting on all the body work and go and ride this thing. We're very close at this point. And I know, Jake, the Tenere 700's out by now. Even in the US, you big goof. Yeah, there was like a pandemic. Flash Tune ECU, what is this thing? When we originally were kind of doing the project on this bike with the Bolt Stuff On series, we put on a flash tuner. Basically, instead of putting like a piggyback sort of tuner like a Power Commander on, we actually went into the ECU and were able to change variables in it, from fuel tuning, ignition timing, to all sorts of other things in there. It was a really cool bit of kit. I know a lot of people are like, would you not like Power Commanders? Because I've used Power Commanders in other projects like the 636. No, I don't have a problem with Power Commanders. I think they're absolutely fine. Their software is honestly easier to use. If you take your bike to a dyno that has a DynoJet brand dyno, very easy for them to write a custom map for you. The Power Commander sort of sits as its own standalone unit and then kind of interrupts and changes the signals from the stock ECU to change the fueling and the ignition timing. What we're doing here is we're going in directly changing it at the source. There's a degree more reliability with this system like this, a lot more control. If you want more information though on that, if you want to see more detail, go back and watch the video when we first put the flash tuner on this bike. Today what we're doing, we're installing this, which is a wideband tuner. So we're going to be reflashing the ECU to go into this active sort of tune mode so that it'll be basically constantly rewriting the map. With this, we will have very precise tuning. And fortunately, because we have 2 Bros exhaust, we already have a O2 bung on there that will accept this. We just have a little adapter in there we have to remove. I still get emails almost daily asking questions about the flash tune kit. It can be tricky. I had to call them the first time I did it myself. Customer service is kind of, I actually went through like Velox Racing, I think is what it was called. I couldn't get good information from FlashTune. I actually went back through them and they were much more helpful. They're definitely a better source to use. And because of that, I really think if you're gonna buy one of these kits, you really should go through them. I'll put a link down below. I put a link to all the stuff that we always do in these videos below. Purchase through them and use them if you need help. Quick refresher for those of you who aren't gonna go back and watch the old video. This is the plug, this is the plug that we added. And I've got another cable that goes from this to a USB, and this is how we actually plug in and tune things. Before we do that, we need to remove the O2 sensor to put the wideband in there. And an O2 sensor is just a sensor that sits in the exhaust and can kind of measure the amount of oxygen that's in there. And by that, it can get sort of a rough idea of what your air to fuel ratio is. The factory O2 sensor it's more narrow. It doesn't have a big as a band to check the range. By putting a more precise wideband one in there, we can give the computer a much better idea of what's going on. Our O2 sensor resides right here and goes up. I'm gonna go ahead and unclip it. I feel like people always do this like the wrong way. Like they unbolt something like a sensor like this and leave it all connected. It's very easy to disconnect these guys and do it the right way. Sensor itself is on a 17. Look at that little guy, look how little it is. Give you a little adapter here, and by removing it, we now have a bung that will accept our wideband tuner. Very nice. Old, new, and you see much bigger, much more sensing abilities, I suppose. Try not to like touch this. Also, they've already put some anti-seize on here. You do want to put anti-seize, don't put Loctite on these, that's not what you want to do. All right, remove our little cap, screw it in. This is our plug, and this will not connect into there. You get this connector, and then this connector, that. Of course, now we need to address this. So after some back and forth, I ended up putting the connector sort of on the back side of the frame. You need to put a couple zip ties to make sure that the wiring and the cable itself can't get back into the shock or anything. And there's a pretty good gap between them. With articulation and everything, we should be just fine in there. These zip ties I put on, though, they're not super tight. You can always come there and snip them if we need to remove this, do any work in here. It's not my favorite thing to have a bunch of bunched up wire like that, but in the end, you won't be able to see it. And if you can't see it, it's good. Alrighty then, so now we're gonna plug the bike into the computer. I've got my Flash Tune ECU software running. No device found. Okay, this thing I think is where we gotta start. So we need to plug this thing in. It always feels cool when you can plug your bike right into a USB. It's like we're doing something really cool. The first thing we need to do is we're gonna click read ECU. Ignition's off. It's gonna tell us to turn the key on. And say okay. And this is gonna take like a few minutes. I mean, I thought this was my computer initially when I first did this, but I've just heard this takes like 15-20 minutes. So we'll come back when this is done. I'm gonna go inside and not die in this heat, drink some water or something. I've saved that as my current. I think it's always a good idea to do that, so I'll show you some of the stuff in here. Go here to rev limiters. Because yeah, I've noticed this, it's set really high now. I feel like I should adjust these down a little bit. This bike doesn't make a ton of power over 10,000 RPMs, and whenever I did this tune on here, thing will rev to, it'll rev off the charts now. And what you're seeing here, there's fuel limiting and then ignition limiting. And I've got the ignition limiting a little higher than the fuel. I had it, because otherwise you could get some firing and banging. So this should help keep from revving quite so high. It really was set quite high. Fan temps, check this out. I did this last time I was in here. Yeah, look, I've got the low at 182 and the high at 187. High and low just means like high is when the fan turns on and low is when it cuts off, and it's kind of confusing terminology there, but this was the big deal with this before. This fan wouldn't turn on until this thing was like at 220 something degrees, almost getting close to boiling over. Check this out, D-cell ignition cut. I've got that set to false. A lot of people turn that on, and if you download most of these maps, when you download, they're gonna default that is a true. And what that means is when you cut the throttle on this bike, the way Yamaha has it set up, it really like cuts the ignition very abruptly. I think it pulls it way back, and that gives the bike a ton of engine braking, almost a bit abrupt. And a lot of people don't like that, and it's understandable. If you leave that on true, it'll be a little less aggressive. Me, I don't mind. I've been riding supermotos for years, so it's not a big deal. So we're gonna go down here to this, and we're going to enable this. So I went down there to paid features, activate tune kit enabled, air to fuel ratio target. Ooh, what is this? Oh, this is so cool. And what you're seeing here is, so you always hear them talk around like 14:1 or whatever is like your best air to fuel ratio. That's best for efficiency. Actually, as you get closer to trying to create peak power, it's actually more like 12 or so to 1, and they can see higher up in the rev range or the throttle position. It looks like they keep theirs at 13:1 is the target. So we've done this changes here, but they're not just automatically in the bike here. So what we have to do is go back up to device, write ECU. This is the part where it does its thing. I'm gonna act like I know what it's doing. I don't know what it's doing. Write successfully, you may disconnect. Ooh, look at that. So let's turn this off. Just something I wanna see. Okay, I'll mess with that later. My kid's trying to go to bed right now. Cool, we've done it. As it currently sits, the speedo's just gonna be a little off. Apparently that's just a feature that they took away for some reason, like last year on their tuner, because apparently a lot of bikes now just read them off the ABS sensors, and so there was some confusing stuff and getting a bunch of error codes. The Flash Tune Y, not all of us have bikes with ABS sensors and reads off these. This bike is right off the front sprocket in the motor. Why disable it for everybody? Please bring that back. I would really like to change the gear ratio. For now, we're going tuned our bike. Well, actually, we will be tuning our bike when we ride it all the time now. So that's pretty cool. Got too hot yesterday, so I took a break. Come back out today and it's even hotter. Phone's going off, there's all kinds of warnings, like stay inside. Everyone's like, don't go out today, but you know, here we are. So yes, I'm gonna be wearing this, I don't care. My wife said, you look like a dork. I'm like, oh well. Finished obviously flashing the bike, and we took the spools off this bike. This bike had those T-Rex sliders. We have their spools though on the back, which just sort of clamp onto the system. I ended up removing them, sent them to a Patreon free. You're welcome, guy. They're just sort of clumsy. They're a little tight when you would take the tire on and off, and that knobby's a little bit wider. I mean, it's still a 180, but it's just got a little more beef to it on the edges. And Matt, as we keep talking about, Matt with his FZ, he brought me these yesterday. He's actually running an entire Tracer 700 swing arm on the back of his, which is a couple inches longer. So he's gonna technically have more travel, he'll have more ground clearance. It's pretty cool. It's not cheap. I know it's costing him a chunk of change, and these weren't gonna work for him anymore. These are like go into the adjuster on the back and they let you use a stand, right? And I never understood how these work. I always saw these and thought, what a dumb product, because if you actually have to take the wheel off, I thought this has to come out like the normal one. No, it doesn't. It actually wedges itself in here with these little guys. And that's so brilliant. It was a smart system. This thing is even on a small roller here. They're a little worn. They're not brand new, but they look good enough. I just cleaned them up a little bit. I don't even think we need to take the wheel off to put these on, as long as the axle's tight. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna pop these on real quick, then we can put the bike on stand. The nice thing too is I'll be able to take the wheel on and off without losing my chain adjustment. Kind of an odd thing, this takes a 15. We'll just snug it up there. It seemed to me I should at least run one of these jam nuts on here. Now we'll tighten these up. Should lock this into place.